ألا لله الدين الخالص.
Okay, yeah, so Tawheed. I want to make this as interactive as possible, so it's not just a boring lecture. So I'm going to ask you guys questions. You guys are free to ask questions, comment at any time. And I'd just like to first ask, what do you guys know about Tawheed? Or what it means? Alright, perfect. That's really good. Everyone should be able to answer. Shahada. Alright, cool. Alright. Those are all good. So yeah, Tawheed is basically, it comes from a root word in Arabic, which means to make one, or the unity of, right? So it's about making Allah one, basically identifying Allah as one. You could also call it Islamic monotheism. You can also call it where Allah calls Ibrahim a Hanif. So he was upon Tawheed because he was strictly upon monotheism, Islamic monotheism. Okay, so these are some of the contents that we're going through. We're going to go through Tawheed, the Shahada, the Prophet's understanding of Tawheed, the Sahaba's understanding, who is Allah, why we should love Allah, what is worship, and then of course shirk, the story of shirk, the evil of shirk, and how to avoid shirk. So La ilaha illallah, this is Tawheed, this is our Shahada. At face value, today in modern day, La ilaha illallah sounds like, or is known to be, that there is no God but Allah. However, although this is a correct meaning of the phrase, it's deeper than this. And we have to always look into the context of the Prophet's life, the 7th century Arabia, the linguistics, the language during that time. So the scholars have put a little more detail into this phrase, and they say it means there is no deity worthy of worship but Allah. So the reason they say this is because Ilah, at the time of the Prophet Muhammad was understood by the mushrikeen of his time to be an object that is taken as worship. So not just a God, but also something that is worship. And this is the emphasis of the Quran, especially. That Allah emphasizes not only that He is the only God, that He's the only Lord, that He's the only one divine, but also that He could be the only one that is worshipped. Okay, so we're going to start with Allah is your Lord. This is very clear. Everyone knows this, yes? There's no doubt about this for anyone. And I have an ayat. I'm not going to read through all of the ayat that I have on. You guys are free to read them. I'll share this with anybody that wants it, and they can read through it. But for this one, I will read this. Where Allah says, "Is there any creator other than Allah that provides you with sustenance from the heavens and earth? There is nothing deserving of worship besides Him alone." So Allah is your Lord. Secondly, we have Allah is the divine. And what we mean by the divine is Allah essentially is the only one with divine attributes. No one has any other divine attributes, whether it's singular or plural. No one but Allah is divine. And this is another ayat where Allah says, He is Allah, other than whom there is no deity, the sovereign, the pure, the perfection, the bestower of faith, the overseer, the exalted in might, the compeller, the superior. Exalted is Allah above whatever they associate with Him. So these are some of Allah's divine attributes, where no one and nothing shares any of these attributes with Him. So the two sections so far, we have Allah is your Lord, and Allah is the divine. And then thirdly, we have Allah is the worship. And we have an ayat where Allah commands us to say, "Indeed, my prayer, my sacrifice, my living, and my dying are all purely and solely for Allah, Lord of all the worlds." So we have three sections that we have gone through, which have been categorized by scholars as Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, and Tawheed al-Asma wa-Sifat. So we have Tawheed of Lordship, Tawheed of Worship, and Tawheed of Divine Attributes. And the way that the scholars have extracted these categories is through the Quran, of course, and the Hadith. And one ayat that is comprehensive is where Allah says, Lord of the heavens and the earth, whatever is between them, so worship Him and have patience for His worship. Do you know of any similar to Him? So in this ayat, they were able to see that Allah claims His worship, claims His lordship, and claims that He is unlike anything else, as in His divine attributes are not shared by anyone else. Can anyone think of any ayat that points to any of the three at the top of your head? Ayatul Kursi is perfect. It's comprehensive. Al-Fatiha, perfect. So usually they say, the scholars say, Al-Fatiha is the first and foremost, that it begins and it ends with these traits. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Allah is the Lord, of course. All praise to Allah, Lord of Earth. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So His attributes. Malik Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. That is Tawheed of worship. You alone we worship, you alone we seek help. So these are the three categories that scholars have extracted from the Quran and the Hadith. And now, again, since we are talking about understanding, our understanding of Tawheed, what is Tawheed, we have to go into how do we extract these understandings. And obviously, anyone can interpret anything any way they want. And people do this all the time, and it happens in the Muslim Ummah as well. So, we as Muslims have been protected from this sort of fitna, where Allah has preserved the religion, and Allah has preserved the understanding of the religion as well. So we have the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ bringing the Quran, reciting it to the people, it is clear. Then we have him explaining it. Then we have the Sahaba explaining it. Then we have the Sahaba students explaining it. Then we have the students of the Sahaba explaining it. So these are the three generations that the Prophet Muhammad tells us that we are commanded to follow in understanding. And this is us today. We're in the 14th century Hijri. So we have no choice but to refer back to the understanding of these three generations.
Just a question, you're talking about the religion. So it's not permissible for, like, if we were to look at the Quran and read it, so it's not permissible for us to interpret certain verses.
So there's like two categories. I don't know what they're called in Arabic, but the Quran is a blanket guidance for everyone. One who opens it, he can read and he can understand. However, the part that I'm talking about is certain aspects of the unseen. Aspects of the unseen is, of course, how is Allah, things like this, or how is the next life, things like this. You can't interpret this yourself because you really have no idea. And the reason you're forced to stick to the Sahaba's understanding and the Prophet's understanding is because, again, an obvious reason is I'm giving this lecture to you guys right now, right? Can anyone say that someone outside understands it better than you guys? Obviously not, because you guys are here witnessing right now, hearing it right now. Even if one of you guys were to tell someone outside, they wouldn't know it like you know it, because you sat there, you saw it, you heard it, you smelled it, you know, all your senses were active in that setting, so you know it better than the rest of the people. So that's why we stick to the Prophet's understanding and the students. Like it's purely straightforward, logical that they would know better. And Allah has preserved their tradition, and this is a lecture for another time, the preservation of Islam and how it's unlike any other system of preservation in all history, in any sort of tradition that exists. So yeah, now we're going to go into how did they understand Tawheed. And okay, we have a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam where he says, when he sends the Sahaba to Yemen, you will come upon the people of the book, so let the first thing you call them to be Tawheed of Allah, so oneness of Allah. And then we have the Sahaba's understanding where they understood the Prophet's hadith where he said, you must adhere to my sunnah and the sunnah of the righteous guided successors. And he has identified them to be 3 generations. So this is a very clear hadith for us to stick to the Sahaba's understanding. The 3 rightly guided caliphs and the generations. Okay, so, and then we have in the Quran, why should you follow the Sahaba and the understanding of the Sahaba? Because Allah has, in His speech, immortalized, in a sense, that He is pleased with the Sahaba. And we have the ayat here where Allah praises the Sahaba. As He says, and the first forerunners in the faith among the Muhajirin and the Ansar, those who follow them with good conduct, Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Him. So what do we have here? We have the Muhajirin, those who immigrated. We have the Ansar, those who welcomed the immigrating Muslims. And then we have those who follow them in good conduct. Allah is pleased with them and we are pleased with Allah. So this is very clear. And then we have a hadith to support this, of course, where I will summarize this hadith, where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, Allah looked at every soul of the creation. He looked at every soul of the creation, every heart of the creation, and then Allah found that Prophet Muhammad's heart was the best out of all of them. Then He found the hearts of the Sahaba were closest in goodness to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So He made them all come together, as in like exist in the same time, so that they can support each other. So Allah put the best of people with the best of Prophet, and those are certainly the Sahaba. This kind of very, but yeah, I'll just read this. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ again says, and this is a shocker, Diana, to me and I'm sure to a lot of Muslims, that the Muslims will knowingly, purposely divide themselves into groups. Divide themselves into groups with different understandings and different people that they follow. And this will be 73 sects. That there are 73 groups in Islam. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ admonishes 72 of them and says that they are to go to Jahannam because of this, and that one of them will be saved. And then He explains who will be saved, and He says, those who follow that which I and my companions are upon today. So the understanding of what I understand Islam is, as in the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his companions. Those who follow this sect, and we call this what today? We call this orthodox Islam, basically, right? So you're forced to, and I don't mean to say forced, but you have to. Allah has commanded you. Allah has told you that He's pleased with the Prophet and the Sahaba, and that they have the best of hearts, the best of conduct, and He has threatened all those who oppose Him, all the groups that oppose them, with hell. So you have to follow orthodox Islam. You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice of saying, I believe this is like this, I believe we should interpret this like this, or maybe this is wrong, maybe this is that. You can't be a progressive Muslim. You can't have speculative thoughts about Islam or about Allah or try to change things. You can't be a reformer. It's forbidden. It's completely forbidden. And obviously this is very obvious. Why would these things be forbidden? Obviously because Allah knows best. And Allah legislates a religion with all knowledge and all wisdom, not out of ignorance. And of course, there are people who struggle with these types of things. They want to change Islam. They want to reform things. And because of how things are today, and they perceive things to be good that are actually haram and things like this. But for us, for Muslims, it's always best that you are that you accept what Islam is, you accept that it's from Allah, and you accept that it's best, even if you commit that sin. Even if, for instance, if you commit zina, you never make it halal, because it's haram always, and always is haram. This is better for you than saying, oh, actually it's halal today, because things will have changed. This can be apostasy. This can be kufr. If you were to say this, try to change the religion, it could be apostasy or kufr. So it's better to say that you're weak, that you're mentally challenged, and proceed from there. Right, and then we have other hadith about the sex where Prophet Muhammad says, beware of all newly invented matters in religion, where every new matter is an innovation, every innovation is misguided. So Prophet Muhammad says, all of innovation is bad. And then he also has a hadith where it says, hold firmly to it as if guiding with your mother. So he says, hold on to my sunnah with the back of your teeth, which is the strongest of your teeth, where you have all your teeth holding on to it, right? So he says this, like, hold on to my sunnah like this. And then Allah says in the Quran, this is one of many ayat, where Allah says, and of the people is he who disputes about Allah without knowledge or guidance or an enlightening book from him. So, what is Allah saying here? Can someone explain to me? I'll say it again. And of the people is he who disputes about Allah without knowledge or guidance or an enlightening book from him. Does anyone understand that? What do I mean? Basically, so the people are talking about Allah without a book, without guidance, without knowledge from him. And who would know about Allah the best? Perfect. And then before the prophets, Allah, right? So Allah critiques the people who say Allah is like this, Allah is like that, based on their own opinions, because obviously Allah would know best who Allah is. Okay, so here we just have Sahaba statements, we have the Tawheed statements, which are the students of the Sahaba, and then we have students of the Sahaba, what they say about Allah, how you're to believe about Allah, what you are to believe about Tawheed and Shirk. And I'm not going to go into all of it, although it's all really important. It's actually so important. But I genuinely believe we all are correct on these issues, because only insane people try to oppose what the Sahaba said. But I will read this hadith by Ibn Masud, where he says, the worst of the worst major sins are to associate partners with Allah, to lose hope of the aid of Allah, to despair of the mercy of Allah, and to feel safe from the plans of Allah. So this is a Sahaba. Ibn Masud is someone who the Prophet Muhammad said, there are two scholars of the Quran, Ibn Abbas and Ibn Masud. So he singled those two Sahaba out to be those who understand what the Quran means. And this Sahaba has said the worst sin is to commit shirk, to lose hope of the aid of Allah, to despair of the mercy of Allah, to feel safe from the plans of Allah. So this is, inshallah, a reminder for us all that it is a sin and it is haram to lose hope in the aid of Allah, to despair of the mercy of Allah. Here I have a statement from Abu Hanifa, which is a student of the Sahaba, which is also debated, but we'll just say he is, because there are traditions that point to him being. And he speaks about Allah and how the Sahaba, because he's learning from the Sahaba directly, and he speaks about how the Sahaba believed about Allah, that they affirmed Allah's attributes without saying His attributes are like creation. And then again we have Imam Shafi and Malik, they elaborate on these things. And inshallah, if anyone wants to see these in detail. But yeah, so what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that we have the Sahaba's statements, we have their students' statements, and we have their students' statements. And they have been authenticated, they've been passed down, and so there's no excuse. There's a famous hadith of Umar, where he says the excuse has been cut off. That there is no excuse for the one who changes his religion or thinks it should be like this or like that, because everything has been preserved and passed down. And again, this is the chain where we have the Prophet conveying to the Sahaba, then to their students, and to their students. Okay, so what is worship? Now I'm going to go into this. We're obviously not going to read all of this. I'm going to ask you guys, what do you guys think worship is? If you could just give one word or one sentence, one word is fine. Anything that comes to mind. Perfect. Mission's good. Okay, perfect. Good. Statement, awesome. Good. Alright, we'll stick with that. So we all have some understanding, of course, what worship is. And these are, again, some statements that I would definitely want to send to everybody that they can read, because it's important to be conscious of your understanding of what worship is while you're doing it, right? So it's more meaningful, so you're more present when you're doing it for Allah's sake, and it has more substance. So here we have Allah in the Quran explaining a part of what worship is, where He says, maintain with care the obligatory prayers and the middle prayer, and stand before Allah devoutly obedient. So devotion is worship. Obedience is worship. And then we have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says, "O Allah, I submit my face to you," so we have submission, "and I entrust my affair to you." So trusting Allah is a worship as well. Because of course Allah controls everything. And this is an attribute of His divinity, His Godhood, that He controls everything. And that you should trust the one who controls everything. And it is haram not to. And then He says, "I commit myself to you out of hope and fear of you." So these are some emotions to have in the heart, where one should hope in Allah, and one should also fear Allah, as Allah is all just and punishes us as sinners, and Allah is all powerful and capable of everything. So if He is not to be feared, who will be? So in summary, worship is utmost reverence, devotion, praise, exaltation, humility, and obedience to Allah. Okay, so why love Allah and why worship Allah? Again, I'm going to ask you guys to give me one or two, three things. I want to hear three things. One per person. Really good. Awesome. Awesome. Great. Alright, we'll stick with those three. Okay, so we have infinite reasons, actually. We're not going to go through all of them today, but we'll go through a handful. And we'll start with who Allah is, and who is Allah. And as we said, Allah is our creator, our ilah, our God of everything, which makes it His sole right to be worshipped. That there is no God with Allah, and there is no one who provides for you other than Allah. And again, who Allah is qualitatively, infinitely greater than anything else that can be worshipped. So not only is it Allah's right, because He is your God in truth, He is your provider, your sustainer, but at the same time, He's qualitatively greater than anything else that could be worshipped. Who we are. So we are the creations of Allah, and our worship should be dedicated to Allah, our creator. It only makes sense, right? And then we have Allah's intent, that Allah has created us for worship. He has planned everything and created everything in accordance to this intent. So what kind of crime would it be to avoid this, right? Or to do even worse, or do the opposite of this? And then continuing, we have Allah's mercy, Allah's actions, His favors upon us. What has Allah not done for humans as a whole? And then if you can think, would any of you give up your eyes, you know, even for a short period of time, or your hands, or your ability to hear. You know, you'll never be able to hear again. You'll never be able to listen to the Quran again. You'll never be able to have a normal conversation with him again. Or if it were to be your sight. And all the beautiful things. None of you would give that up. And these are two things so far that Allah has done for us. And so the list goes on. And every cell in your body, every cell in existence, the intricacies what Allah has dedicated, put into it, we want to give those things up. Even the ability to think, to know, to study, to be able to write stuff, we want to give these things up. And these are the favors that Allah has favored us with compared to other creations. And then we have Allah's promise. This is, of course, within Allah's action of His favors, where Allah is all good, and He rewards those who do good in this life and the next. So this is another reason to worship Allah. We're worshipping Allah out of Allah's mercy. Allah rewards you for it, despite the fact that it's purely the right thing to do. But Allah rewards those who do the right things. And then we have our nature and our needs. And humans are desired in a way to desire worship. To revere and exalt the exalted. Humans are constantly out of our nature, how we're made. And Allah is generous and here for all of our needs. So that's another reason to worship Allah. That Allah is here for our needs and we are the needy. And ultimately, any one of us will find ourselves either obeying Allah, worshipping Allah, or something else at the end of the day. And here I just have some ayat and some hadith in regards to this. Where Allah says, "It is He who has produced you and made for you hearing and vision and hearts. Little are you grateful." So these are some blessings of Allah: hearing, vision, and our hearts, our ability to feel, to think. These are all reasons that we should worship Him. And then we have in Surah Rahman, Allah says, "The Most Merciful taught the Quran, created man, and taught him eloquence. And the earth He laid out for all the creatures. Therein is fruits and palm trees, having sheath of dates, and grain having husks and scented plants. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny?" So these again are just lists, short lists of things that Allah has. And this is very interesting about Surah Rahman. Allah first starts with stating Himself, the Most Merciful. Then He says, taught the Quran, before He says created man. It's very interesting aspect of the surah, where it's a surah about Allah explaining His mercies to the world, and He starts with the Quran before He even starts with creating mankind. And this is another reason to worship Allah, that Quran is a mercy for us, and it's something that benefits us, and it's another reason we should worship Allah. And He has taught man eloquence and our ability to speak, to make jokes, to have a good time, to make friends, to write papers, to think, do all these kinds of things. Get to a point where we're able to make these computers, projectors, and have a presentation like this. Allah has taught us this. Allah has granted us this ability to constantly progress. And then we have other things. He has laid out the earth for us. He's made it beautiful. He's given us fruits and foods, all kinds of things. And then we have certainly created man in the best of stature. Now Allah has created us in the best way. That we are unlike the creatures. Allah has granted us beauty, and we work out, we look better, we're able to do amazing physical acts, Allah, and mental acts. Allah has given us this. So these are more reasons to worship Him. And then we have the favors of Allah. Allah has promised those who believe in deeds of righteousness that for them is forgiveness and a great reward. So these are more reasons to worship Allah. Allah is merciful and bountiful, generous. And we have a hadith of the Prophet reported by Omar, where those some prisoners of war were brought to the Prophet ﷺ, and a nursing woman was among them. Whenever she found a child among the prisoners, she would take it to her chest and nurse it. So she's looking for her child to nurse it, right? The Prophet ﷺ said to us, "Do you think this woman would throw her child into the fire?" We said, "No, not if she was able to stop it." The Prophet ﷺ said, "Allah is more merciful to his servants than this mother is to her child." So this is another reason that the Prophet ﷺ explained that not only are Allah's favors bountiful, but His mercy is as well. Now, Allah does not wish for any person ill, and Allah wishes for us all to succeed. This is another reason to worship Allah. So, short explanation: Allah has rights. Allah has every right, and Allah's rights are unlike our rights. They're absolutely true. And then we have a more emotional aspect of it that has Allah not done for us, that we should not be grateful to Him. So now we're moving on to shirk. What is shirk? And again, I'm asking you guys. Who knows what shirk is? Alright, good. Perfect. Anything else? Good. Abstract. Alright, that's good. So Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Quran, where the man tells his child, "Indeed, association is great injustice. That it is the greatest injustice." And okay, so to associate with Allah in any and all aspects, this is what shirk is, pertaining to Him, whether it be His essence, His personhood, or His worship. Shirk can be committed on the tongue, the limbs, or heart, even in the mind. Here's a parable of shirk that will help us understand a little bit why it's so serious. Where the Prophet ﷺ says, oh, actually, this is a hadith, a Prophet Muhammad, but he's narrating a hadith of John the Baptist. So John the Baptist says, "Indeed, Allah has commanded me with 5 commandments to implement and to command you to implement. The first of them is that you worship Allah and not associate anything with Him. The parable of the one who associates others with Allah is that of a man who buys a servant with his own wealth, gold or silver. Then he says to him, 'This is my home and this is my business, so take care of it and give me the profits.' So he takes care of it and gives the profits to someone other than his master. Which of you would be pleased to have a servant like that?" So this is purely, do you guys understand this? Right? So this is purely like the rights of Allah. And he has a parable, John the Baptist explains this parable that you have this worker or slave, and you give him a home, and he's your slave. You give him a home, you provide for him, whatever, and you ask him to take care of your business, and he takes care of your business, and then he gives the wealth to some random guy somewhere else. And then he asks, which of you would be pleased with someone like this? That someone would do something like this. And the example for Allah is, of course, greater. It's not just that Allah has given us a home or permission to take care of. Allah has provided us with everything. He provided everyone else with everything. So the example for Allah is far greater. Okay, so Tawheed versus Shirk. This is the story of how it appeared in all of history. Does anyone know the story of Shirk, how it started? Okay.
So there was a period of 10,000 years between Abil and Habil. Okay, there was 10,000 years between Abil and Habil's lineage, and so within that period, there was an old man. Okay, I get it. I remember. Sorry, the story is kind of long. Yeah. So Abil and Habil's lineage lived on for 10,000 years, and at the time the Muslim was very small, right? It was very concentrated, and so people like who actually practiced Islam, and they relied on other people, on like older, wiser men, to maintain their to maintain their practice, basically. And so what I remember is that one of these old men, like these wise men, who they idolized when they practiced Islam, died. And so when he died, the shaitan came in the form of another wise old man, and he was like, "Oh, you know what you guys should do to commemorate his commitment to Islam?" And then they were like, "What?" And he was like, "You guys should build a statue to commemorate him." Place it right in front of the mosque, so that whenever they see his the statue, they can remember his good deeds and his commitment to Islam, and they can imitate that commitment. And so that went on for years. Like they built the statue, they placed it in front of a mosque, and generation after generation, no one would ever commit shirk. They would always just remember Islam, and they practice even more. Until at some point it just reached a time period where the story was completely lost, and the people would go and they'd look at the statue and they'd be like, "Oh, this is God," and they just start to pray to the statue. And so that was the first known evidence of shirk. Or not evidence of
Accent. Allah Barak. That's very comprehensive, and that's what things we're going to go to next slide. So that is the whole story. And I guess the point that I would point out is shirk didn't start with Shaitan coming to the people and telling them, "Oh, worship this guy." Shaitan was patient with them, and he had them gradually lose and forget. And this is another important reason why we hold on to the interpretation of the Prophet Muhammad and the Sahaba, because it prevents us from this happening to us. Okay, so where is shirk when it comes to sins? Of course, shirk is the greatest of sins. Then we have the major sins, and then we have the minor sins. Okay, so now we're going to go into some reasons of why shirk is so evil. We've already gone into, and I'm sure you guys can think a lot from what we've already said, but here are some more specific reasons. First, we have equivocation. Prophet Muhammad said that you make something equal to Allah while He is the only one who created you. And then Prophet Muhammad says another hadith that you set up a rival unto Allah, though He alone created you. So Allah is infinitely great, and Allah is your Lord. Allah is the one that created you. Allah is the one who provided for you. Allah is the one who provides for your loved ones, and continues in this. Yet, as a mushrik, you associate with Allah, with Him, something that is infinitely unworthy, infinitely less than Allah, infinitely just completely irrelevant. Where Allah is the one who did all these things, and you give it to this garbage instead. So this is they're like polar opposites. Allah is infinitely greater. Allah has infinitely more rights because everything is done for you, and you give it to some garbage instead. So this is the evil shirk. It can never actually be quantified. The evil shirk can't even be quantified because of Allah's status. And that brings us to the status principle, where Allah says, "Exalted is Allah above whatever they associate with Him." And Allah's status and His rights are infinitely greater than rights of the creation. So sins against Allah are unlike sins against the creation. And then we have we have a equivocation a little more detailed where someone equalizes between Allah, which is His ultimate source of sustenance, with things that can't even help themselves. So this is the pinnacle of ingratitude and falsehood. And then we have contradicting Allah's intent, contradicting human nature. Now, Allah has created you for worshiping Him, Allah has created you upon the fitrah, and then you are doing what? Doing the exact opposite. Like it makes no sense. And it's like they pay you to work, and you sleep at work instead. You don't get anything done. This isn't right. You're purely on these types of things. And obviously, there are so many more reasons. These are just some things that I want to specify. So if you think that if someone asks you, you quickly remember, oh, this is one specific point, this is another specific point. You can just know those. Okay, then we have the types of shirk. We have major shirk, and then we have minor shirk. And does anyone know the difference, or a possible difference? Okay, really good. Yeah, so when we have major shirk, it's usually in regards to having another Lord, having another God, or sharing in divinity, things like this. Like there's another person who shares divinity. Or that you straight up worship something other than Allah. Because it could be as simple as form of major shirk can be you literally prostrate and you take any object, you prostrate to it, intending worship. This is major shirk. Despite the fact that you may know that thing isn't God, but you wish that you could revere it to that level. The flag?
Yeah.
That's really good. You mean like nationalism person?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That has definitely happened. And the Prophet Muhammad said nationalism is worth less than the shit that a shit beetle eats. So you know the dung beetles? It says it's worth less than that. So nationalism can be another aspect of shirk as well. And then the brother said minor shirk is like, okay, you don't take things as gods, you don't worship them, but it's kind of like, it could be that you have something in your heart that is kind of shady or shifted. This can be intent or in like reliance, trust, things like this. And one of the examples the Prophet Muhammad gave is where he says the minor shirk is boasting in worship. That you're worshiping for Allah's sake. You're doing an act of worship, and then you see someone come in, and you want to change yourself a little, make it a little more proper, or wait a little more. Or you're praying, and then you see the wali, the dad of the girl that you really like, and then you pray, you read Surah Baqarah. But usually you weren't going to read Surah Baqarah out loud, right? You're just going to pray quick and you're going to go. So these things can be minor shirk.
What about money?
Money can be minor shirk. It can also become major shirk. Like things can evolve, right? Those things. But money, desires, all these things can be minor shirk. And we're going to go through a few more examples later. Okay, so we've gone over Tawheed and we've gone over shirk, and I want to conclude with basically what the Prophet Muhammad says: verily thinking well about Allah Almighty is part of excellent worship of Allah. So this is just a reminder for all of us: thinking good of Allah is part of the worship. Because of course we're at the point where we talk about Tawheed and we talk about shirk, so it's time to worship. So this is somewhere where you can start. Think good of Allah is your act of worship. And then I have a long hadith here. The Prophet says in Hadith Qudsi that Allah says, "Whosoever shows enmity to someone devoted to me, I shall be at war with him. My servant draws not near to me with anything more loved by me than the religious duties I have enjoyed upon him." So the Father. my servant continues to draw near to me with sunnah acts, nafil acts, so that I shall love him. When I love him, I am his hearing with which he hears, his seeing with which he sees, his hand with which he strikes, and his foot with which he walks. Were he to ask something of me, I will surely give it to him, and were he to ask me for refuge, I will surely grant him it. I do not hesitate about anything as much as I hesitate about seizing the soul of my faithful servant. He hates death, and I hate hurting him. So this is the status of a Muslim who completes his fard. So since we're talking about worshiping, we have to complete our fard, and we add upon it nafil acts, sunnah acts, so that Allah loves us, continues to love us, and Allah will grant us insight. Allah will grant us strength when we strike. Allah will grant us understanding, sight, to be able to see things that other people don't see. Like to have your heart be expanded, feel better, to feel more, be more compassionate, things like this. And Allah hates to hurt this one, this man, this woman who is this type of worshiper, as He hates that. So these are just some reminders. And then I have this hadith where the Prophet asks the Sahaba, "Oh Mu'adh, do you know what the right of Allah is upon His servants?" So Mu'adh said, "Allah and His Messenger know best." The Prophet ﷺ said, "To worship Him alone and to associate none in worship with Him." So this is Allah's right, first and foremost right. And do you know what their right is upon Him? So what is our right upon Allah if we do this? And He says, Allah and His Messenger know best. The Prophet said, not to punish them if they do so. So if we understand our Tawheed, we hold on to our Tawheed, and we protect it, and we avoid shirk, Allah will not punish us. Okay, now I made like an interactive, low-key interactive. This will help us like kind of visualize. Yeah, sounds different. It's just it's like yes and no type things, right? So we have Tawheed Rububiyyah, which was what? Who remembers what that was? Tawheed Rububiyyah. Yeah, lordship. So Quraysh are the polytheists of the Prophet Muhammad's time. So, okay, so the point of this is we have three sections of Tawheed, basically identifying Allah as one in His lordship, His worship, and His divine attributes, right? And then we want to basically guess, if you could think, because you've got to think a little, which ones do the Muslims have compared to the Christians, compared to the Jews, and then compared to the Quraysh Mushrikeen, if you could guess. So, obviously, a true Muslim is supposed to have Rububiyyah, right? All three. So, he believes Allah is his Lord. So, since Allah is his Lord, what does he do? He worships him. Oh, that's fine. But, yeah, so he worships him, and since he worships him and Allah is his Lord, it must also mean that Allah is the only one who's divine. It only makes sense. And that's the beauty of it. It only makes sense. Okay, so now we have Christian, and this is arguable depending on which group you look at, whether they're orthodox or they're monotheists or they're Arian or whatever. The two most famous are Orthodox and the monotheists, right? The Catholic Church. Who thinks the Christians satisfy the oneness of lordship? You think so? Yeah, so it does depend on how you look at it. But we would say no for why? Because not only do it's because there is shirk of personhood, that their Lord is not one, but three persons in one essence. So we don't say that they satisfy the Tawheed of Rububiyyah.
What is that?
Lordship. So that one person is your Lord.
Not person. Yeah, it's not.
We mean person as in like personality. Okay, so in worship, again, that would be no. And this would vary in degrees depending on Orthodox or Catholic. And then divinity, of course, also no, because multiple persons share divine attributes. And then, okay, Jewish.
Question about the last one. Let's say they could the divine attributes be like the same because they still the same like attributes to God.
What we're saying is Tawheed, Asma Sifat. So
Oh.
that Allah is the only one who's divine.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. I mean, if you look at the Orthodox, like the Nicene Creed, how they basically canonize
The belief, especially the ones that worship, like the ones that like praise.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about that. Yeah, so that's another. It's like an extremist aspect where they maybe the Catholics. It's some of the Catholics for sure Irish Catholics do it, where until we worship. Huh? Yeah. However, they do ask them to be intermediate, right? And they ask for certain things. And it's a corruption. Huh? Yeah, I don't think Orthodox do either.
It's just
Yeah.
they believe that the Pope is closer to God.
You know what's interesting about Catholics though? The Catholics are modalists. So they technically believe that God is one person, which is interesting. They kind of check off on that, but then they on worship they do whatever they want.
Wait, so how does that?
Right, modalists. Catholics. So they believe. So you know Thomas Aquinas? He's the most famous Catholic church father. Right? He explains it as like all three persons are not three persons, but they're one. It's one person expressed in different ways.
Something like
Yeah.
It's not that. It's not that.
Wait, what's the
It's just some heresy.
it's like
The way they-
parts of the whole.
Yeah, they use an egg to explain that. Okay, so Jewish.
Yes.
Yeah, so we would say Jews do believe Allah is one, but if you ask their some of their next level rabbis, they would say something else. They have, like, if you read the Talmud, like, which you shouldn't, like, some of the rabbis are really crazy. Do you know what Hellenistic Judaism is? Hellenistic Judaism is like a branch of Judaism. It's not Orthodox Judaism, obviously, but Hellenistic, where it's Greekish, right? So it's Platonic theology mixed in with things. So they actually, like, when you read that stuff, you can tell that there are more persons being involved than just one Lord, right? So, but that's not the Jewish belief. This is like a strange branch, right? So we're not saying that to be just to them, right? We're saying the Orthodox Jews, yes, they believe that God is one. In worship, what would I put here? I put X. Because, yeah, so the reason we're saying X here is because Allah has critiqued them for worshiping their rabbis in certain acts of obedience, because they changed certain rulings based on the rabbinical tradition. So since it's an act of obedience, Allah considered it worship, and it was an act of obedience in religion, right? So Allah considered it act of worship, and He negated that they were monotheists in this regard. I believe I put an X here. Again, this is because having a rabbi change a divine command would have him be divinely wise in that ruling or something like this thing. Obviously not, but it could be that serious, so we put an X there. Okay, the Quraysh, the Mushrikeen of the Prophet Muhammad's time.
It was pretty easy.
So interestingly, no. Yes. So yes, they believe Allah was their sole Lord.
But they would worship other things.
Yes, so they would worship other things. So we put a check here, we put an X here, because they would worship. Go ahead.
But they worship idols.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But they didn't believe that those idols were their Lord. They didn't believe those idols created them,
So then,
or even provided for them.
Allah asks these prophets.
And they say Allah. They say surely they'll say Allah, and they say Allah. And they ask them, yeah, and they always answer Allah. So they knew Allah was their sole Lord, despite the fact that they worship other things with Him. So the last one, the divine attributes. I made a mistake. I put a check here. In reality, it's an X, but it would depend on who you asked, even during that time. But it should be an X because they believe, kind of similar to some of the Christian groups, that in Christianity the Logos becomes Jesus, and the Logos is the knowledge of God, that specific attribute. And then the Mushrikeen of the creation, the same thing, where they took the power, the might of Allah, and they turned it into one of His daughters. Right? So they claimed that Allah had a daughter, and it was from the attribute of might. And then there's another one, another daughter, and they claimed it was the attribute of this. So similar to the Christian, where they said the Son of God is from the Logos, something like this. So it should be an X. But yeah, so this visualization is just so we can identify things, right? And we can protect ourselves. That we make sure that we believe Allah is our Lord, that we only worship Allah, and that we only say Allah is divine. As in, like, an example of knowing that Allah is divine goes into something even as like horoscopes. You guys know what horoscopes are? Believing in the stars. The Prophet ﷺ said, those who believe in horoscopes, believes in the star dictating what's going to come next, that he's a mushrikeen, that he's disbelieved in Allah. So this is important. This goes into His sifat. This goes into His divine attributes. Let's see. But yeah, so that's another example. I just want to conclude with, inshallah, we can go into some detail about minor shirk things. Most of us, I'm sure, will avoid major shirk for the rest of our lives, inshallah. But minor shirk is the one that's hard to tell. The Prophet ﷺ said, the thing I fear most for my ummah is minor shirk, and that it is as secret as an ant that walks at night. You know, so it's something that can be very hard to detect sometimes. And one of those aspects is when you do an act of worship, are you doing it for Allah's sake? Or if someone walked in and you start cheating or something. You have to combat these types of things. And then we have certain other things where are you worshiping money? Like this can be minor shirk. You always care about money. You sell out your religion every time you get money. Or we have in Saudi today, and not to bash on Saudi, because I love Saudi, but some things that's happening there today is the people love the ruler a lot. And whenever he does a sin or legislates a sin, they say, some of them go, as the Shia is saying, if our Muslim ruler did it, it must be halal, or things like this, right? That's stupid. So you need to check yourself on nationalism, on money, ideology, like the culture. Are you following the culture over what Allah intends for you? Things like this. So inshallah, we can go into detail about these things some other time, or on your own. Inshallah, and I have some resources on this. But that's it. Jazakallah khair for tuning in and listening. It's much appreciated. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
ألا لله الدين الخالص والذين اتخذوا من دونه أولياء ما نعبدهم إلا ليقربونا إلى الله زلفى إن الله يحكم بينهم فيما هم فيه يختلفون إن الله لا يهدي من هو كاذب كفار.